Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Part B Speech Language Pathologist Common Rejections and Denials webinar. This webinar is designed for those who submit claims on the CMS 1500 claim form or the 837P electronic claim. My name is Mary Muko. I'm a specialist on the Provider Outreach and Education team at WPS GHA. I will be your speaker today, and assisting me is my friend and colleague, Leanne Foster. We include this disclaimer in all our education, and we do so to remind learners that although we made every effort to provide current information that is correct, the information is subject to change. It is on the CMS website where you will find the Medicare rules that determine final coverage. These laws, regulations, and rulings will always prevail. We will provide responses to questions based on the facts given. And finally, CMS prohibits recording of this presentation for profit-making purposes. We are recording this webinar and we will post it as an encore presentation. You can stay informed about new postings of the latest encore presentations and other education events by reading the education news we post each week on Wednesday. This is the copyright notice we provide for the American Medical Association. Your continued participation in this webinar infers that you agree to the terms of this copyright notice. Should you not agree to acknowledge this copyright notice, you may disconnect now from this webinar. Here is the agenda for today's presentation. As I mentioned, we will focus on data. That data is taken from those specialty type 14, that should say 15, I apologize for that. Specialty type 15 speech language pathologist claims, and those are the Part B claims, those submitted on the CMS 1500 claim form or the 837P electronic claim. Today, during this presentation, just as I advertised, I'm going to focus on that data. I'm going to reveal the most common rejections and denials submitted by specialty type 15. I'm going to share with you how to fix those or avoid those. And finally, I'll provide resources, and we will give you ample opportunity to ask questions. If I don't get to them live today as time permits, I will make certain to reach out to you and get those answers to any questions you have that are presentation related. To fully understand rejections and denials, it is important to recognize the path that a claim takes, or what we at WPS like to call the life of a claim. This is a simplified graphic on how your claim gets into our system. The provider or supplier, of course, will render the service and submit the claim, but the system might reject the claim or even the entire batch. And when this occurs, we generate and send a 277 or 999 report. This slide describes that claim submission in a little bit more detail. Most providers are going to submit claims electronically. In fact, very few qualify for a waiver under a law that prohibits Medicare from making payment on a claim when it's not submitted electronically. So in order to confirm claim receipt, providers should use the 999 report. Use the 277 report for more specific information. Now, our electronic data interchange, or EDI staff, created the Medicare 276-277 companion guide, and you can see I've embedded a link to that guide here on this slide. This guide will help clarify and further define the data content requirements for an electronic claim. Now, based on both reports, you will know if the batch is rejected and if you need to correct or resubmit a claim. Here is a simplified graphic, and this one shows what happens to a claim that Medicare deems as unprocessable. Again, the service is provided, the claim is submitted, but something's wrong. Something doesn't make sense. There's an incorrect format. Perhaps there's invalid information on that claim, and the claim is rejected. It's unprocessable. It's never adjudicated, and the remittance advice is generated. Here is a slide that shows the slide-by-slide comparison of a rejection to a denial. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to understand there's a huge difference between these. I think that many of us, even at WPS, use these words interchangeably, and perhaps that's happening within your organizations as well. A rejection, as I mentioned, is unprocessable. It's returned on the front end because it can't be adjudicated. It's missing, or it includes incorrect information on that claim. Something's invalid. There are no appeal rights. You need to resubmit the service. When a claim is rejected or unprocessable, you will see an MA 130 and CO 16 code on that remittance advice. The patient is not liable for rejected claims because you need to fix them and resubmit them. A denial, on the other hand, is adjudicated. A denial happens when the service fails to meet Medicare's payment criteria, and this could be for a number of reasons. I've included some of them here on this slide. It could be based on a law or what we call a statutory requirement. It may be denied because it doesn't meet Medicare's medical necessity requirements, and this would include frequency or any utilization parameters. Another reason a claim may deny is due to eligibility. Sometimes the eligibility is that of the provider. Sometimes the eligibility is that of the beneficiary or your patient. When a claim is denied, most often, with very, very few exceptions, there will be an MA01 code on the remittance advice, not on the claim. That should say remittance advice. And what that does, that MA01 on the remittance advice, is it provides appeal rights in most cases, with few exceptions. And patient liability for a denied service is determined. Here then is the graphic for a processed claim. The service is provided, the claim is submitted, and based on Medicare's edits and audits, that claim or service is paid or denied, and the remittance advice is generated and sent to the provider or his or her billing service. Let's talk a little bit more about that remittance advice. Sometimes we call it the RA. Some people refer to it as the remittance notice, and some people just simply say the remit. Most providers receive an electronic remittance advice, or ERA, as opposed to the standard paper remittance, or the SPR. Now, that electronic remittance advice is going to include details about the transfer of funds and payment processing from the payer, in this case Medicare, to the health care provider's bank. And depending on how the claim processed, it may even include information about adjustments made to the claim or even denials. It could also include information about something that is missing. Sometimes it provides notice about refunds and offsets. There are codes that appear on the remittance advice. These provide information about the claim. Claim Adjustment Reason Codes, or CARCs, will explain why the claim paid differently than it was billed. Remittance Advice Remark Codes, or RARCs, provide more details about the adjustment that's described by the Claim Adjustment Reason Code. Another type of code that appears on the remit is a group code, and group codes convey financial responsibility for the unpaid portion of the claim balance. So if you see on the remittance advice a CO group code, that means contractual obligation. The provider is liable and cannot bill the patient. A PR group code means the patient is financially responsible. Let's talk about those codes or the maintenance of those codes just for a little bit. You can find code lists on the Washington Publishing Company's website. It is that company, the WPC, that maintains those codes for CMS. The lists are on their website. Now, we at WPS understand that some of the codes may be cryptic. Some of them are out of date or include outdated acronyms. Uh, that's a good example, and I'll point those out to you a little bit later on in this presentation. These are something that we can't change, and I fully understand that these acronyms used in these reason codes are outdated, but I need to share them with you today just as they print out on the remit advice, or just as they print out on those reports that are generated when we look at and analyze data at WPS. After reviewing your remit, you're going to need to choose the action that you need to take to fix or correct, resubmit, or request an appeal. Now, for an unprocessable or rejected claim, you're going to need to fix the error and resubmit the claim to Medicare. Now, if the claim or claim line denied, there may be multiple actions that you can choose from. You might be able to simply resubmit the service. You might also be able to use a process known as the clerical error reopening, or CER process, in order to fix those clerical errors. And CMS does define clerical errors, including minor errors or omissions, as human or mechanical errors on the part of the party or the contractor. And I'll talk more about that CER process later in this webinar. Another action to consider is an appeal. The remittance advice will provide the appeal rights to you with few exceptions, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to discuss appeals a bit later in this webinar also. Registered users of our transactional portal, that is the secure side of our website, they can use that transactional portal to render a clerical error reopening or to request an appeal. And this is just one of those self-service tools that CMS requires that MACs like WPS offer for their providers, because these really do offer the most efficiencies. And for those of you that might not be familiar with the acronym that I just used, a MAC, MAC stands for Medicare Administrative Contractor. We do have a portal user manual that provides illustrations and step-by-step instructions on how to use these portal features. And I'll point that out to you a little bit later on when I am demonstrating some of the web pages and resources on our website. Here are just a couple of CMS resources about the remittance advice, or the RA. If you'd like more information about these, you can take a look at these a little bit later on at your own convenience. These are embedded links that I've provided. Additionally, CMS offers publications and trainings on their website, as well as WPS. And it's very likely you'll find some great information about the remittance advice. Next, I want to talk about when you need to correct or appeal the MAC's decision to pay or deny a claim. I talked earlier about that clerical error reopening process, and I told you that I'd share more details later in the webinar. This is that process to correct human or mechanical errors, and clerical errors or minor errors are really limited to errors in form and content. They're not omissions, such as failing to bill for certain items or services. Now, your handout includes the link to the resource titled How to Request a Clerical Error Reopening. This is a resource on our website. It gives you examples of acceptable clerical error submissions, clerical error reopening submissions, I should say. This would include things like transposed procedure or diagnostic codes, maybe misapplication of a fee schedule, mathematical, computational mistakes, so on and so forth. There's also examples that cannot be processed as a clerical error reopening included on that same resource. And some of those examples would be provider enrollment issue, or maybe the wrong payee. There was a wrong payee situation. There's also situations that we consider complex claim situations. Those would be those claims that include a not otherwise classified code or an NOC code, claims with modifiers 22, 23, 62, 66, and a few others. They're all listed there on that resource for you. And then, of course, any claim that requires analysis of documentation would not be able to be part of this clerical error reopening process. And again, remember, you can use the portal for self-service. Or if you want or prefer, you can request your clerical error reopening via telephone or fax. And remember, our portal user manual actually provides instructions for this process if you're using the transactional side of our portal. Here is the information I promised you about appeals. There is a great number of resources available that speak to the appeals process for Medicare claims, both out on CMS's website and ours. I've included some of those in the resource section of your handout, but there are 5 levels of appeals. There is only one level of appeal that is rendered by the MACs, like WPS, and that is the level 1 appeal known as a redetermination. There are time limits for submitting and for completing an appeal, and there's also monetary thresholds for filing for some of the levels. You can see here on this slide that level 3, the administrative law judge hearing, and level 5 appeal, federal court review, have an amount in controversy, or AIC, and that's a dollar amount, a threshold that applies in order for that level of appeal. You can check out how to appeal a claim determination out on our website. It includes details about the appeals process. It provides some great information about the fact that the beneficiary or their representative can request an appeal for any service that's processed for them, but providers and suppliers may appeal services for which they accepted assignment. Now, there's a couple exceptions here. For unassigned claims, providers and suppliers can act as the beneficiary's representative, but the beneficiary needs to sign an authorization statement, and one example of this is the CMS 1696 Appointment of Representative form. We have forms available on our website, as does CMS. Now, providers and suppliers can request a redetermination on an unassigned claim if Medicare denied those services as not medically necessary, or when the provider or supplier billed in excess of the limiting charge. And in such a case, when the provider billed the beneficiary in excess of the limiting charge, the provider or the supplier would need to refund any fees that were collected from the beneficiary. Remember, we recommend using self-service options for more efficiencies, and this would include, of course, requesting an appeal. You can use the transactional portal in order to do that. This slide lists for you or includes that embedded link to that really informative resource on our website called How to Appeal a Claim Determination. And the second bullet there is one of my personal favorites, and I like to share that with my audiences when I'm talking about appeals. The reason for this is I'm a visual kind of person. I like to see a process visually. This is a flow chart, this fee-for-service appeals process flow chart. CMS updates it annually. So for those things that could change in that appeals process, such as the amount in controversy for levels 3 and 5. If you're using this towards the end of the year or in the new year, make certain CMS has updated it if you're using those amounts from this flow chart. The flow chart is just a great visual. It shows you the time frames to submit an appeal. the time frames for completing the decision on that appeal request, those dollar amounts and such. So I think you'll find it very informative. It includes both the standard and expedited processes for appeals, but the standard process is for both parts A and B, and the expedited process applies only for some Part A appeals. So some of you who may be participating in this webinar today might also work with Part A services. This webinar is designed to give you information about Part B submitted services, but some of you do both, or some of you simply want to learn about the Part B process. So you do need to recognize that the expedited process, that expedited appeals process, applies only for some Part A only appeals. All right, this next portion of this presentation is specific to that which I advertised I would cover today. To analyze the data for today's webinar, I used a data dashboard that was created by our data informatics team at WPS. This team is known as Insight. Staff in that department created the dashboard so that those of us in PO, like Leanne and myself, we can enter various choices, or what they like to call slicers, to view the data that we want to look at. So for this webinar today, I chose all states in our MAC jurisdictions 5 and 8. This means the states of Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska, and also Michigan and Indiana. The data that I will present is claims submitted only by Specialty 15 providers. And for those of you that don't know what Specialty 15 means, it is a 2-digit code that's assigned during the provider enrollment process. And that 2-digit code identifies the applicant's self-designated primary specialty. Now, although a provider can designate a second or a third specialty, it is only that primary specialty that is used during the initial claim processing. CMS maintains the list of specialty code. It belongs to them, not to WPS, although we've published it on our website. Now for this webinar, I selected claim submission dates March 1 of 2024 through May 31 of 2024. The data was last refreshed on June 5th of 2024 so that I could prepare the handout for today's event and analyze that data and put together my presentation materials. But what this means, that refreshed on June 5th date, means that any claims submitted by Specialty 15 providers after June 5th are not included in the data that I analyzed for today's webinar. And just as promised and advertised, I said that I would reveal the common rejections by reason for Specialty 15 claims. And this is based on the data poll. You'll see the common rejections listed here. And those numbers that appear behind them are the number of rejections during that 3-month time period for which the data was pulled. March 1, 2024 through May 31, 2024. Data last refreshed, remember, June 5th of 2024. Now, remember, folks, that we don't own these reason and remarks descriptions. We don't manage those codes for CMS, so we can't change them. So if you see an outdated acronym here, it's on purpose because that's how that rejection prints out when we pull this data, or that's the information that's being placed on their remittance advice. Some of them are a little cryptic or seem like they include information that's wrong. For example, what you're looking at here is common rejections. And remember, rejections are very, very different than denials. However, look at that third bullet. The first word says denied. It's not denied, it's actually a rejected claim. I do want to point out to you that I did this on purpose because this is how these reasons print out. So first of all, claim lacks information needed for adjudication. I will tell you that nearly every claim that's rejected is going to have that reason on it. It will also have additional reason or remark codes to tell you a bit more information about what's really wrong with that claim or what it really is lacking. Claim must be submitted to RRB. That stands for Railroad Retirement Board. This means that the patient is retired from the railroad and they have benefits. Medicare benefits are administered by the Railroad Retirement Board Medicare contractor. That is Palmetto. So for those services that are rejected by WPS, you must submit that claim to the Railroad Retirement Board. You can avoid this type of referral by looking at your patient's Medicare cards. If they are a railroad retiree, it will state that right across the bottom of their Medicare card. So share that with the folks on the front end that see your patients, that room your patients, or look at those cards as they're presenting. It's a good idea to look at those cards each and every time they present for services. Next is denied, invalid, or missing modifier. I'll provide some resources for you later where you can find the fact sheets that we have written that explain appropriate use of modifiers, inappropriate use of modifiers. Some of these fact sheets even include the range of CPT codes to which those modifiers can be appended. So then there, again, a common rejection by WPS for claims submitted to us, 47 of them. Next, the procedure is inconsistent with the modifier used or required. We know that there's a lot of modifier fact sheets available that you can look at. Check those modifier fact sheets to see the list of CPT codes or HCPCS codes to which that modifier can be appended. Or, maybe this is a situation where it's inconsistent with the modifier because the modifier was keyed wrong. Maybe it was a transposition issue. But anyway, that's where you need to focus there is both that procedure code and the modifier. Check the documentation to see if the documentation warrants or justifies the use of that modifier. Next common rejection by reason is claim must be submitted to another contractor. I'll show you resources later, but you need to make certain that you're submitting your claim to the correct contractor. In this case, the claim was submitted to WPS, but it should have been submitted to another contractor. CMS maintains on their website an interactive map where you can click on any state and it will tell you the provider or the name of the contractors to which you need to submit claims. It has the Railroad Board Retirement or the Railroad Retirement Board contractor. It has the Durable Medical Equipment contractor out there. It has, the MAC contractor, of course. It has some of the special medical review contractors out there, state by state by state. This will help you get those claims submitted to the correct contractor. Here are more common rejections by reason. Procedure, that one is a duplicate. I apologize. That procedure inconsistent with the modifier used or required. Another common reason for rejection for Specialty 15 claims is that the patient or insured HICN and their folks is an example of an outdated acronym. I know that it's outdated. It is here because that's how this reason code prints out. And we can't change the reason codes because they don't belong to us. It's the Washington Publishing Company that maintains those for CMS. Patient HICN health insurance claim number, now known as the Medicare beneficiary identifier, and the name do not match. You need to make certain that the identifier on the claim and the name on that patient's or beneficiary's Medicare card match exactly. Let me give you an example of that. If the middle initial is used on the card, the middle initial has to be used on the claim. So it needs to match correctly. And remember, these are all rejections. You need to fix them, resubmit them. Here's a couple more that state denied, even though they're rejected claims: invalid or missing modifier. Check to make sure that the modifier was keyed correctly. Is it not a valid modifier? Is the claim missing a modifier? Do you need to append one on that particular claim line? 23 rejections. Next, invalid, incorrect ICD-9 code. There again, we have outdated information, folks. I know that it's an ICD-10 code. The reason code was not updated by the Washington Publishing Company. What you need to do here is submit an invalid submit a valid or correct ICD-10 code. You submit that on a new claim. Next, the clinic number is missing or was not entered. So look on the claim. Look to see the clinic number that was entered, or look to see it was entered, I should say. Is it missing? 17 rejections. I thought it would be interesting, since we can do this just by filling in a blank, so to say, when we're mining this data or using this data dashboard that Insight created for us. We can actually, we could see all these reasons for rejections, but we can also look at the rejections, hit my scroll button, by code. So here are the common rejections by HCPCS and CPT code for specialty 15 providers. The numbers represent the how many times it was rejected in that 3-month period. Let's take a look at some of these. 92507 is treatment of speech, language, voice, communication, and or auditory processing disorder services. Claim lacks info needed for adjudication. That's typical, that claim would have that because something's missing. It lacks the information we need to process it. 260 rejections. And here are the most popular reasons for that code to deny for specialty 15. Patient, insured, HICN, and name do not match. There was 20. Denied, invalid, or missing modifier, 16. Claim must be submitted to the railroad board, 16. Procedure, inconsistent with the modifier used or required, 26. Clinic number missing or not entered, 10. So it's interesting for these rejections here. There was just something entered incorrectly, used a modifier used that's not appropriate. So these are those reasons then why these claims are rejecting. 92526, treatment of swallowing dysfunction or oral function for feeding, claim lacks information needed for adjudication. This service is also rejecting rather. See, I almost said denied. Rendering physician number invalid or missing from the claim. Another reason for rejection, the diagnosis is missing or it's not linked. You can't bill the patient. You need to submit a new claim. 97129, speech language therapy. Rendering physician number invalid, missing. Claim must be submitted to the Railroad Retirement Board. Claim must be submitted to another contractor. Invalid or missing modifier. So for most of these codes, you can see or hear, based on what I'm telling you, that they're the same reasons over and over that these are denying. Procedures inconsistent with the modifier used or required. Those 10 reasons I just gave you are the top reasons for rejections, and these are the codes. So of course, the reasons these codes are rejecting are due to those first 10 common reasons that I shared with you already. Okay. Just looking through my list here to see if there are any others, and they're all the same reasons that these codes are rejecting. All right. In the advertisement for today's presentation, I mentioned that we would be covering rejections and denials. We talked already about the difference between these and how they really are different, and those choices that you need to make to fix or correct them are really different based on whether it's a rejection or denial. No big surprise here. The most common reason for denial is that the physical therapy or OT limit has been exceeded, and that is how, I know we're talking speech language therapy today, that's how that reason prints out. 1,248 rejections in that 3-month period. Provider's certification expired, 408 claims. Well, if I received e-remittance advice and that was on there, I would look to see what provider number was used on that claim. Is Medicare's records correct? I mean, is the certification expired? Those are the kind of questions I would be asking. I would pick up the phone and call customer service, ask to speak to someone in provider enrollment, and make certain that the records that we have provide the same information that's available in your office. Does something need to be updated? Those are the kind of questions I would ask. Next denial, collection of fee-for-service during periods of managed care. Um, I have to kind of chuckle when I look at this one and tell you that I mentioned to you already that, some of these are a little bit cryptic. What does that really mean? And really, what that means is that this particular patient is a Medicare Advantage patient, a Medicare Part C patient. WPS is the MAC for Parts A and B. Those traditional beneficiaries or traditional Medicare beneficiaries or original Medicare beneficiaries. So in this case, these were denied services because that patient is a Medicare Advantage patient, not a traditional or original patient. The next bullet you'll see actually three different types of duplicate denials. Duplicate charge paid on such and such a day on this claim ICN, 223. Those question marks and numbers and X's there are actually filled in with dates and ICNs. Another denial for duplicates is this is a duplicate charge, 221. Yet you might receive another denial that says duplicate charge of claim. It'll provide the ICN now being processed. That means there's two claims in our system right now for the same service. So again, it's a duplicate. Folks, we have been seeing duplicate denials forever. Since I started working in Medicare, certainly for as long as I worked in outreach, and these just don't go away. So what we really want to do is let you know that there are ways to cut back on these, to eliminate these. Continued submission of claims that are duplicates are actually considered by Medicare to be a form of abuse. It costs money for everyone. It costs you money, you the provider. It costs Medicare money. If you're using a billing service or within your entity, if you're automatically spitting out a new claim every 30 days because Medicare's not paid or you haven't received the remet yet, stop doing that. Remember that there is a payment floor that we have to, we have to hold payment for a certain number of days before we can release payment. Many claims that are submitted undergo the edit and audit process where we're looking at things. We still need to pay those claims timely, but it could be on day, 18 or on day 14. So take that into consideration when you're just resubmitting every 30 days. There is that payment floor that we need to be aware of. Let's take a look at some more common denials. Denied service. Units of service are exceeded. This is for those services with a medically unlikely edit. This is a limit on the units of service that can be billed on the same day by the same provider for the same patient. Medicare or CMS publishes those edits. It's part of the National Correct Coding Initiative out on their website. Some of those edits, though, are not published. They're confidential, and that is due to fraud and abuse reasons. But for most of them, you'll find the maximum units of service that can be billed on any one day. Now, that doesn't mean you can't bill for more than that number of services. It just means they're going to be denied when your claim is initially processed. You need to request an appeal and provide your medical record documentation that justifies why Medicare should pay for an additional unit or units of that particular service. Next, common denial, payment adjusted, because this procedure is not paid separately. That's a form of bundling. We have a resource on our website that speaks to bundling and what you can do to avoid these denials. Now, that's not to say that some services are bundled, always bundled. You'll never receive payment for certain services when they're billed with another service on the same day or a particular service on the same day. You can look at CMS's relative value file in the status code column. If one of those services has a B status code, it means it's bundled, always bundled. There's no way Medicare is going to make payment for that particular service because it's a bundled service. Next, physician supplier not eligible to receive payments. This is where you'd want to pick up the phone or check, well, Not necessarily. Perhaps you transposed the provider number on the claim form. Make sure that that was entered correctly. It may be a situation where you do need to pick up the phone and call provider enrollment and make certain that all of the information in that record or eligibility file is up to date. Service is denied because the patient is in a hospice. 66. This is a situation where you're going to want to check eligibility for your patient to see if that patient is in a hospice. If so, then the claim does not get submitted to WPS. Time limit for filing your claim has expired. This is that exception, folks, that I talked about. These have no appeal rights. Time limit for filing your claim has expired. There is no appeal right. You can request a waiver of the timely filing, but you cannot request an appeal. And I'll point that waiver out to you in just a moment. In fact, I'm going to do it right now so I don't forget it. So I make sure I have time, because this is a popular reason for denials that we'd like to do away with. It costs you and everybody money. This is the WPS GHA website. The URL is included in your resources in the slides. I'm a searcher, not a navigator, so if I'm looking for something on timely filing, I simply type that into the search box, and right here, timely filing of claims is a resource on our website. I'm going to choose from one of these Part B mappings of our jurisdiction. This is the resource that I've included in your handout for timely filing of claims. This says that you have to submit claims furnished within 1 calendar year of the date of service. It also provides for you the CMS Internet Only Manual section that states when a claim is denied for timely filing, there is no appeal rights. Okay? This is what I want to point out to you, this section right here. We get a lot of questions or a lot of requests to waive timely filing or reopen claims denied for timely filing when another insurer has recouped their previous payment, causing the delay. CMS does not accept errors caused by incorrect third-party payment as justification for not submitting a claim timely. And this is where you'll find that information. So if you're requesting that we waive time limit for this reason, CMS says, no, it's not acceptable. There are some potential reasons for extending the late filing limit. If you believe you qualify, you need to submit a letter to the Medicare claims manager, and this tells you how to do it, and it tells you what you need to include right there. Okay? So if you have a situation that you want to request a waiver to extend the late filing limit, that's where you find the information. All right, here then are the codes or the common denials by HCPCS and CPT code listed here again for you. Fee for service during periods of managed care for 92,507. PT or OT limit has been exceeded, 706 claims. Provider certification expired. Duplicate charge on another claim, duplicate charge on a claim now being processed. Physician supplier not eligible to receive payment. Services denied because the patient is in a hospice. So you can see that these reasons for each of these codes are those 10 that I just talked about. 97129 and 97130 are time-based codes. That 97129 represents the first 15 minutes of treatment, can only be billed once per day. Then you would need to bill the 97130 in conjunction with the 97129 for each additional 15 minutes of therapy. So this is one of those services that are being denied because units of service exceeded. That 97129 should have 1 unit of service. Other reasons: PTOT limits been exceeded, provider certification expired, and duplicate. So again, all of these codes denied for those reasons that I covered just recently. Now, if you think that it would be helpful for us to host a webinar that breaks down reasons for these. Now, I didn't advertise I was going to do it in this one, but that doesn't mean we couldn't do it in the future. If you believe that it would be helpful to your billing office or to you to learn why these individual codes are rejecting. We could further break down that data and offer it. And that would be something that you would want to include when you fill out that survey following today's event. Okay. I think it's interesting, though, that most of these services aren't denying due to medical necessity or those types of reasons. They're denying for other reasons. So it's really not tied to anything that you find in one of our policies or in our billing and coding guidelines. Instead, there are things like um, duplicates or uh, fee for service during periods of managed care. It's a managed care beneficiary. This service can't be billed separately, those types of service or duplicates. So they're really not tied to medical necessity, and that's interesting. Now we can further break down data. We can do it by state, by county, state by code, county by code, and we can also look at trending. And I want to show you an example of trending, just to show you what kind of things we look at WPS in order to determine what kind of education we need to create and what type of events we need to host. Here's a data trending denial example. The code description is the time limit for filing your claim is expired, no appeal right. From these reports that we can, this dashboard that I told you about, where we can enter what it is we want to look at. You know, do we want to look at rejections? Do we want to look at denials? Do we want to look at your specialty? Do we want to look at all specialties? Do we want to look at only services in Michigan? Only services in the county of Wayne in Michigan. We can do that. But here's trending information for all of our states, this specialty for that time period that I told you up front. Claim count the current 3 months for this denial reason is 48, but the 3 months prior was only 1. So the difference in the number of claims is 47, and the percentage of change is 4,700%. We can look at this report and it will show an arrow up or an arrow down so we can quickly see the difference in that claims change. And this, folks, is what we can use to determine what we need to focus on in our education. And that's the reason why I showed you where to find this timely filing information on our website, is because of this. This is the data that backs up why it is I needed to talk about that with you today, because look at that increase in the number of claims. So what I will do later down the road in a few months is I'll pull data again and I will look at these reasons to see if the education we have developed have decreased. And that's really our goal. Here then, at this final portion of my presentation are resources and tools, and I'm going to move through this rather quickly. All of the resources and tools that you'll see here are embedded links so you can easily get to them. It is in the IOM, the Internet Only Manual Publication 100-04. That is the Medicare Claims Processing Manual, specifically Chapter 26, that tells you how to complete a claim form. It, for example, says item number 1 needs this, item number 2 needs that, item number 3 needs that. Well, we all know that most providers don't submit on paper anymore, so our EDI folks, electronic data interchange folks, has created this crosswalk. And this is a spreadsheet that shows you if it goes in item 1 on the claim form, on the paper claim form, where does it go on the electronic claim form? I'm going to show you how to find that, because I think this is a really valuable tool. Let's see here. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to go back to our home page and start there. If you look under quick links, you'll find EDI. Choose it. This takes you to the EDI website for WPS. If you scroll down, you will find Medicare EDI. Scroll down farther, you'll see the link to those companion guides I talked about earlier, 276, 277. Right here is that crosswalk. Of course, I've given you the direct link. And this is what it looks like when you're looking at it. It will give you the item on the paper claim form, item number here on the left column, item 2, 3, item 9, item 8. you know, all of them, all of the items on the claim form, and then it will tell you the narrative of what it is you're adding to the claim. And if it's in item 14 on the paper claim, where does it go on the electronic claim? Here it is, all the information. So it tells you where to put it on the claim form, it tells you requirements for the claim. And notice the status column, that's S, S, S. There's some of them that are R. I'll get there yet. Here's one that's R. Tells you at the bottom of the page that if you find an R in that status column, it means any data element that is needed in order to process a claim, it is required. If it's an S, it's situational rather, where any data element must be completed, but only if other conditions exist. So that is our crosswalk, folks. Great tool. Here is information on our website about rejections, and we've listed these by remark codes. So if your remit shows up with a particular remark code, go to this resource and it will tell you how to correct that rejected claim when that remark code appears on the remittance advice. Similarly, common claim denials. We have listed these into various categories. We have the bundling category, the global surgery category, entitlement denials category, and so on and so forth. So you can look at this resource to find those reason or remark codes that appear on your remit to learn what you need to do to correct or receive payment for a denied service that you believe is payable. Here's a link to our website. We talked about provider enrollment today. We have guides and resources on our website. We have a lot of upcoming events on all kinds of topics. And again, that's based on that feedback that we get in those surveys. Keep those comments and suggestions coming, folks, because this is really what drives what we do and what we choose to present during live events like today. Encore presentations are available 90 days following a presentation or a live presentation out on our Encore Presentations webpage. We have, I scrolled too fast, I'm sorry here. We have a lookup tool on the WPS website. It is on the homepage of our website that allows you to put in a code or a term, you know, maybe a diagnosis code, to see if that code appears in in a policy. I'm trying to get to it, and it's hard to do two things at once, you know. Here I am. I'm going to go here and pull this over for you in just a minute. Okay, I think I am, if it cooperates with me. All right, I've got it finally. Apologize for that. This is what I'm talking about here. On our homepage is this code lookup tool. You can choose to search our LCDs and articles by code, title, or definition to see if a particular code appears in one of our policies. I'm just going to pick out another one here. And if it doesn't show up here, the search brings back nothing. You know that that particular code doesn't appear it's not going to be in the LCD because CMS doesn't allow us to put a code in an LCD, but they do allow us to put it in the companion article. So this will bring back those matches for you. So if you're looking to see if something is covered by a policy, could be a national NCD, national coverage determination, or a local coverage determination, you can search there. We have a YouTube channel that has some great videos. One of them is the Medicare Advantage Plans video. I put a couple other another example out here, global surgery related in other videos. We have a therapy playlist. So you can check out the playlist to see if there are any videos that would pertain to you or those working within your office. Modifiers, here's that web page that I told you about with all of those great fact sheets. I've included the direct link here in your presentation, but if you're looking to find this on our website, go to modifiers here under quick links, or you can search here, or it's found under the topic center of claims. You'll look under claims. This is where you'll find modifiers. So there's a lot of ways to find the modifiers. choose modifiers, and here then are those fantastic fact sheets modifiers. All right. I'm going to speed things up a bit, get through this information that I want to talk about. Outpatient therapy code modifiers are specific modifiers that may pertain to you, so I've enlisted that there. Timely filing, this is where you can find that link to what I showed you earlier. We want to partner with you if you have an organization, a society meeting or conference coming up, and you want someone from WPS to come and speak at your conference, or maybe you belong to a chapter of the AAPC, the American Academy of Professional Coders. Send us a request. We'll see if we can come and speak live to you. Freedom of Information Act I've included here. It's a link because if you want specific information on why your claims are denying or what codes are denying at your place of business, you can request that specific information. However, there may be a charge associated with it, but that would be done through the Freedom of Information Act. Here are some CMS resources. The Medicare Coverage Database is where CMS houses all of the policies. They've included a tool called How to Use the Medicare Coverage Database on their website. This is where you can find the annual therapy update. Here is a link to the physician fee schedule, that's PFS, relative value files. That's where you'll check that status code column B to see if services are bundled. The correct coding initiative edits are CMS website resources. Remember the one that was hitting for your specialty was those medically unlikely edits. This is, if you click here, will take you to the CMS website, medically unlikely edit lists, those that are published, that is. If you don't know how to use those edits, we do have some recordings available that talks about the NCCI, or you can click here for how to use the NCCI tools. That's a CMS resource they have available. If your claims are denying for eligibility reasons, here is an MLN fact sheet. MLN is the Medicare Learning Network. It's a CMS product to check Medicare eligibility. Here is that link to that interactive map that I told you about, where you'll be able to see, who's the hospice contractor for a particular state, who's the MAC, who's the RAC, all of the different contractors. The ICD-10 webpage I've included because that was one of the rejections or denials that I talked about. I don't remember which one. The IVR and the next slide, the transactional portal. These are self-service tools, the IVR and this one, the WPS GHA portal. This is where you can log in, check eligibility, check claim status, check claim details and actions. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is limited functionality outside of normal business hours. And remember, we have resources available that help you use these. Here is the portal user manual. And on this slide for the IVR, we have a link to the IVR operating guide. Both of these self-service tools to use to help you fix rejected claims or know what you need to do to correct something on a denied claim or to receive payment. We are running short on time. I told you that I would conclude with answers to your questions. However, we are here and we are out of time, so I do apologize for that. I will tell you and promise you that I will respond to any presentation related question. I can't respond to provider-specific denials, but if it's a general question or anything I talked about today, I can certainly respond to you. I'll do that either directly in an email to you, or I will prepare that list of questions and answers and send it out to everyone. I do want to mention a couple of conferences that are coming up. CMS wants us to tell you that they're having a free National Provider Enrollment Conference August 28th and 29th in San Diego. Of course, you'll need to provide your own transportation and your lodging and meals and such, but the conference itself is free. Click on this link for a description and to register. Similarly, there is a virtual National Provider Compliance Conference that's being held very soon, August 7th and 8th. Noon to 4 Eastern Time each day. This is education on a variety of topics for provider compliance professionals. Again, click on the link for agenda and registration information. I think that Leanne has also included links in the chat for each of these conferences. That we've gone a little bit over. Some of you have submitted questions in the chat. Perhaps I can't see those while I'm presenting. That's why Leanne is here with me today. But if you think of those additional questions, send them in. Please know that our greatest compliment is when you recommend our education to others. So please help us reach our goal to provide that current and effective information for all those in our MAC jurisdictions. On behalf of myself and Leanne and our provider outreach and education team, thank you so very much for participating today. We look forward to your survey comments, and we hope to have you join us for future events. You may now disconnect. Thanks, everyone.